That's something I just jotted down when I was 11 years old, really at the age where I really kind of started to speak about the topics relating to my condition. I started to have some personal paranormal and spiritual experiences at that age, which allowed me to really dial in and start speaking about the infinitude of the core condition itself. So there it is, albeit written in some poorer grammar than I'm able to use now at this age, right? But no, that's been a through line through everything I've said over the years, just stated in all sorts of different ways. I mean, my life has really been about finding the clearest way to say something akin to that message. And no, it doesn't just mean all beliefs or ideas or things being true in like a Ken Wilber sense where they're all partially true. No, it also includes specific statements and specific beliefs being 100% true. So it includes the existence of bias. It also includes, in a contradictory manner, all beliefs being 100% true at once. So not just partially true, but completely true. So yeah, it's completely different than sort of like a moderate position where you say, oh, this is partially correct, but that's also partially correct. It includes that and it is that too. It's just it also goes beyond that. So it's not just that sort of partial correctness of all positions or moderation. No, it's much more extreme and much more, well, silly than that, right? Because obviously, if all beliefs are true, then even the belief that no beliefs are true is true. So it's not just that all beliefs are true, it's that none of them are true, right? So all of them are false. So I mean, you're used to it, right? It goes into all that stuff. It unpacks from all that stuff. Now, granted, I had a lot of crazy ideas alongside that one when I was younger. I've talked about those before, ideas that I no longer agree with. So there's some things that have remained consistent and then some other things which have very much changed. That's one of the reasons why I've deleted all my past videos, is because I've had a lot of ideas that I've come to disagree with over the years. But that consistent through line has always been there, the sort of anythingness or everythingness. But again, if all beliefs and ideas are true, well, even nonsensical ideas like there being more than everything is true. So that's where you kind of have to deconstruct the term anythingness or everything, right? Like if any belief can be true, okay, yeah, we can say that anything is true, right? We can call it anythingness. But if we're calling it anythingness because any belief is true, then that means even the belief that there's stuff beyond anythingness is true. Even stuff so far beyond anythingness that the term anythingness no longer applies. So, again, all the explanations fail. But with that said, this video is about digging more deeply into the ad hoc quality of my condition, which I briefly brought up a couple weeks ago. That relates to the anythingness that I've always discussed, that through line that has always been there in all my explanations, even as all my ideas have changed over the years. I try to make that clearer and clearer and clearer. This through line, this core that's ever present. And so let's dig into that, because something I've been doing is discussing with a psychiatrist, talking about my condition with them, getting in touch with a couple neuropsychiatrists too to really dig into this stuff. Fortunately, I have not been diagnosed, or I should say that the condition has not been diagnosed as anything yet. So luckily, they don't think I'm crazy, but we'll see how far it all goes. I mean, I've told them a lot of stuff, and they haven't diagnosed me yet, but I'm still open to being diagnosed with the condition being something like a deficiency. Fortunately, though, like I said, they haven't yet. That's also why I chose to seek out very secular scientific psychiatrists. I didn't want to just go with a holistic person, because I've gone to holistic doctors all my life and they'll kind of just believe everything I say because they resonate with a lot of the topics that I discuss. So I really wanted to go to the opposite end of the spectrum, talk to somebody super secular, super scientific, and see if they would diagnose me as being delusional or schizophrenic. And so far it's been going well. But anyways, as I've been talking over some of my ideas and talking over my condition with them, it's actually created a lot of very interesting discussions. And so they've been having me kind of mull over some of the topics that I go into and really analyze them, and really encouraging me to keep finding ways to clarify them further and further and further. And so something that I've come up with recently is the idea of pronouns versus nouns. This is really going to help you all understand my condition a lot better, and if reality is reflective of my condition, which you'll see why I say that better as well, you'll understand what I tell you is the nature of reality more clearly as well. So what are nouns? Well, they're a person, place, or thing, right? This table is a noun. Ethan is a noun. You're a noun. The universe is a noun. Even reality itself is a noun. Now, yeah, it includes all sorts of things that aren't nouns, but this is just where language is a tool for simplicity's sake. So when I say that something is a noun, don't take it to mean that it's reducible to only being a noun. That's not what I'm saying. Like, for example, triviality, a topic that I always discuss on this channel, that's categorized as a noun as well, because it's simply, a phenomenon or potential phenomenon, or like an ontology. Well, it's not really an ontology. It's ontologically independent. But anyways, it's a quote-unquote something which we can refer to in a conversation. So even though triviality includes anything and everything, especially things that aren't nouns, and even though it itself can be a noun or a verb or anything and everything all at once, linguistically, simplistically speaking, it is categorized as a noun because, you can point at it and talk about it like it's a thing or an object, even if it's not. Absolute infinity, even something as crazy as absolute infinity, that is categorized as a noun. Again, it's not stuck to being a noun. Don't interpret what I'm saying to mean that. It's just as a linguistic device, in other words, as a pointer, it is a noun. Pronouns are different. Pronouns are more generalized than nouns. So let's take one example of a pronoun. The term it. It can mean a tree, a rock, a river, a set of trees. It can mean a forest, a set of bananas. It can mean the grouping of this table and that computer monitor, which has nothing on it. I just have it there for lighting. It's kind of blank, but anyways, it can include that set as a thing, right? A set of things, even though it's got like a quality of manyness to it, it simultaneously has a quality of oneness to it, right? It's one set with multiple things. So a set is also a noun. Therefore, the pronoun it can refer to any set. So it can refer to any individual thing. It can refer to any multiplicity of things. It can just refer to anything and everything across the board. Even anythingness or everythingness themselves can be referred to with the pronoun it. So you can just point it any which way. You can use that pronoun to point at any noun. Now, I've found this discussion or utilization of pronouns to be an even clearer pointer to the nature of my condition and to the nature of reality, especially for going over the ad hoc nature of it, which I'll be delving into in this video as well as another video later too. Because look at it this way, if absolute infinity, again, just as a linguistic device, if that is a noun and triviality is a noun, okay, now we've got this pronoun it, which dangles above all that. It doesn't say anything specific about what reality is. It just says reality is it. But it can mean the moon. It can mean this table. It can mean absolute infinity, sure. It can mean triviality. It can mean all sorts of made-up fictional ideas. The Suggs verse, metaboxialities, is other stuff that's ontologically minimal or ontologically maximal or like meta-maximals, like all sorts of things. It's just, it's it. Whatever it is. It's vague. It's undefined. Even saying that it's undefined, that takes it down from being this pronoun dangling up above down to being a noun, because as soon as you call it undefined, okay, it's no longer just an it. Now it's an it, which is an undefined thing. So now it's just a noun, right? It's no longer a pure pronoun, it's a noun. So as soon as you peg the pronoun it to being any which way, even to being no which way, or even to being undefined, you've already reduced it down to a noun. And the nature of my condition is more akin to a pronoun. Now notice I say more akin to it because, as you'll see, even pronouns themselves break down, but just realize how much more vast of a pointer a pronoun can be than a noun, because a pronoun can literally be plugged into anything. That's why I've tended to call reality or my condition anythingness. That's been a term that I've always stuck by. But again, the problem is that even though we can call it anythingness due to the fact that we can quite literally plug the pronoun it into anything, that means we can also plug it into nonsensical things like stuff that's too vast to even be captured by the term anythingness itself. So the term anythingness fails. You can see why I have a reason to call it anythingness, even though that very term itself fails. It's kind of like, okay, well, what term do we use, right? As I've said before, it's so vast and it keeps going so much ever further that think of how vast anythingness is compared to the color green. Even anythingness, as much more vast as it is, it still gets 0% closer than the color green. So I kind of just have to pick a term. No matter what term I pick, I'm always going to be no closer than any other term. I could call it green. I could call it anythingness, sure, but it's not going to get any closer than green. So I kind of just have to pick the best term. This is where the Buddhist notion of upaya, or skillful means, comes into play. I have to pick the most skillful term that's going to allow me to most skillfully try and communicate the nature of the condition. So there are beings, at least if you take my condition to be reflective of the nature of reality, there are beings who exist, who I talk to and call reality green. And to them, that's as mind-blowing as me right here, right now, talking about these pronouns. Like, that's how vast greenness is to them. And so take that the other way. Now there's other beings out there where we're talking about stuff way more vast than anythingness, or way more vast than these pronouns. They're laughing at us like, what, green? That's so diminished. But like, we're all doing the best we can. And none of us are getting any closer because it's such a boundless level of anythingness that even calling it a boundless anythingness is no better than green, right? Anyways, so you can see with this pronoun it and the fact that we can plug it into anything, you can see why I've tended to always have my trusty term anythingness. I've always tended to use that. But at the same time, you can also see why it fails, because we can also plug the pronoun it into stuff that is absolutely beyond anythingness and entirely uncapturable to it, as well as any other concept we can make up. We can plug it into fictional stuff like Suggs verse, or anything ontologically maximal, and same thing, it can still go further, right? It can still be plugged into stuff that's not capturable by those fictional terms. So notice just how high up this pronoun it dangles over any other term that I could use to describe reality. Anythingness is just a noun. It's not this vague pronoun it, which dangles way above it. Absolute infinity, it's a noun. It is not this vague dangling pronoun it. Anything I pick, it's just going to be a noun. So how high up is this unreachable pronoun it? So really, a clearer way for me to phrase the nature of my condition, and quite potentially the nature of reality itself, is just to say that it is it. Not to say that it is anythingness, not to say that it is trivial, not to say that it is absolutely boundless, but just to say that it is it. And notice something here. It is it. That is more pure than self-evidence. Self-evidence in logic is saying that something is itself. So this table is itself. I say it is itself. That's pure self-evidence. It's like A equals A. Point at an apple and say it is itself. That's the law of identity. That's classical logic and self-evidence. But when we say it is it, we're saying something much more pure than saying it is itself. Because when I say it is it, I'm not defining any which way what either of those its are. I could point out the same thing twice. I could point out an apple and say it is it, and that would be self-evidence, like in classical logic. But I could also point to two different things. I could point at a crocodile, it is an elephant, it. I could point out the crocodile and the elephant. And now we've broken self-evidence. Now we've broken classical logic. Now we've made a contradictory statement. I've just said that that crocodile is that elephant by saying it is it. And then I could just go right back to the comfort of classical logic and self-evidence by pointing out the apple twice and saying it is it. So it is it. It's a much more generalized and purified phrasing than the self-evident phrasing of saying it is itself. So by saying of reality that it is it, I'm not saying that it is itself, so I'm not saying that it conforms to the law of identity or to classical logic, because it could also be contradictory. It could be something entirely different, right? Like it is it, the elephant. But it's also not fixed to being contradictory either. We could just go right back to the comfort of classical logic and point at it twice, say it is it. And we can plug in anything for it, because again, it's a pronoun that we can plug into any noun. So it's not just that I can make contradictory statements like it, the crocodile, is it, the elephant. I could say it, reality, is it, the elephant. As in all of reality, everything that would exist, if my condition is accurate, all of it is just an elephant without sacrificing anything. You think, okay, well, if we squeezed it down, if we compressed it down into an elephant where all of reality is just an elephant, Ethan, it would lose everything. You could say that, right? Certainly I've said as much before, but at the same time, that also doesn't have to be true. You could preserve the full, boundless itness of reality, and yet it's just an elephant. Of course, that's not going to make any sense. Like, well, obviously an elephant is just an elephant. It's not this boundless it that you're talking about, Ethan. Okay, well, what I'm saying is that it can somehow retain the boundlessness even as it loses it to just be an elephant and only an elephant. An elephant can quite literally be the entire truth. A person can quite literally be the entire truth. Hopefully that reminds you of somebody. So yeah, you can plug in anything. Anything can be anything. A piece of grass can be it. All of reality. And of course, the term reality breaks down in the same way that terms like anythingness break down, because reality is itself a noun. So there's fictional stuff, there's super real stuff, ultra real stuff. So I call it reality just to talk about things being real, but there's also things that you wouldn't necessarily call real. You'd call them fictional or super real or ultra real, etc. These are all just nouns. Again, it's upaya. It's skillful means. We're doing the best we can. So this pronoun it can be plugged into all of them, and it can plug it is it from any it to any other it. A piece of grass can be all of reality. All of reality can be a piece of grass and retain its allness despite being this part of reality. It's somehow still all, even though it's just a part. So this will help you understand my condition a little bit better, and this is what kind of helped some of the people I've been speaking to about it, is what would it look like if you were to experience it? Could literally look like anything. Again, that's why I call it anythingness, even though the term falls short. Experiencing it could look like just being a giraffe. That's it. That's your life. How about this? Experiencing it could look like that. You, right there, right now, watching this, nothing else is going on, just this. This is it, because it is it. It is it. You see that? And it is it. It is it. It is it. It's it. Right? Maybe you hopefully start to see something there. I can dig into that more in future videos as well. That's kind of just hopefully something to give a clearer understanding. I should say liberation. As I've said, understanding isn't necessarily a good enough term. Hopefully it gives a clearer liberation, not necessarily an understanding. But even this phrasing, it is it, can be broken down. Why? Because if I say that reality is of such a nature that it is it, well, that means it's just it, right? It's being described by that pure pronoun it. But if it's it, again, we can plug it into any it. We can plug it into any noun. That means that it can be an it which is of such a nature that a better phrase to capture it is that it is not it. This is where even the pronoun itself breaks down, and that even describing reality with the phrase it is also not enough. You can also say it is not it, or it is both, or it is neither. Or just say something entirely random like it is not it, or like plug it into anything, right? That's the nature of the pronoun. So it's not just that the pronoun dangles above all these nouns where it can be plugged into any of them or all of them. It's that even the pronoun itself is explosive. Even it can be deconstructed, as I've done to all the nouns. You can deconstruct it is it into it is not it by saying that, well, if it's any it can be an it that is not it, so it is not it. You can say it is both, it is neither, so on and so forth. So even using this pronoun description itself gets us 0% closer to the nature of this condition and the nature of reality. 0% closer, but it is a clearer description, I hope. Hopefully it's got more skillful means behind it, so to speak. So that's the idea. That's where this pronoun description may help you wipe some of the dirt off the window more, sort of see through it. Because again, it's very purified. It's such a purified description that you're kind of just left like, what? Like it? What is it? And like you can just go on to do anything or nothing or whatever. And going back to what I said about how the phrase it is a more purified phrasing than the classical logical statement of it is itself, we could also say that therefore the nature of reality or this condition or whatever you want to call it, it's a perfectly purified version of logic. It is way more pure than classical logic, way more pure. See, classical logic still has axioms, it has assumptions, right? It's got 3 axioms. It's got the law of identity, which is where that it is itself phrase comes from. It's got the law of non-contradiction. It's also got the law of excluded middle. Picture a logic that is so pure that there's no axioms, no assumptions. It's entirely axiomless. That's what this phrase, it is it, points to. It points to an axiomless, pure logic, a logos, so to speak. To be honest, I don't actually know if the term logos was historically meant to refer to a logic, but I just like to draw that comparison. Even if it doesn't necessarily exist historically, it's kind of cool to think that, well, reality is like this pure logic, and oh, look, God or the nature of existence has been described as the logos in the past. So whether or not they meant it that way, it's just a cool parallel. All right, so it's a pure logic, no axioms, no assumptions. It is it. We don't assume what it is, right? It can be a crocodile. It can be an elephant. So we just say it is it. Or it is it, or just point to any it. We're not making any assumptions. even the phrase itself, it is it. Okay, you could say we're assuming that, but we're not even assuming that, because we can also say it is not it, or it is both, or it is neither. So we're not even assuming the very phrase itself, and even with that phrase, we're not assuming what it is. We're just saying it is it. It's very purified. Purified even of itself. Now here's the thing, since it's a logic which is purified of itself, that obviously allows for the existence of illogical stuff. So again, when I describe the nature of reality as being this perfectly purified logic, don't take that to mean that it's stuck inside of logic or that it's attached to it. No, it's not stuck. It's purified of it precisely because it's so pure. It can be 100% absolutely illogical, or stuff beyond illogical. Entirely beyond illogical, much crazier than illogical. There's all sorts of stuff that's crazier than illogical stuff. I mean, I've talked about syntactically improper and statistically improper stuff on this channel, or non-linguistic stuff on this channel, or ineffable stuff. It can be all that stuff way, way, way further than illogical stuff. Not just despite the fact that it's a pure logic, but because of the fact that it's such a purified logic that it is purified even of itself. That is what I've meant in the past when I've said that it's logically illogical. I'm not saying that it's fixed to logic. I'm saying that because of the logic, it is unfixed. It's unlimited. It's not limited to logic. It's unlimited. You see? It's pure. But as much as it's a pure logic, you could also call it a raw love. Now, I'm actually going to dig into this more in a future episode, because this is its own thing. Like, what does it mean to be raw love? Essentially, what I'm talking about is that it's unbiased. Now, of course, the term love falls apart just as much as the terms logic or anythingness or it. It falls apart too, because if it's a raw, unbiased love, then it's also got love for things like hatred being absolute. So, like, you know, don't be too attached to any term that I'm using. Don't be attached to any noun. That's the point of this pronoun descriptor. Don't even be attached to the pronoun, because even the pronoun it tells you not to be attached to it, because it is it, and it can be it. Don't attach. Be willing to, I mean, you can attach too, you can point twice, but be willing to detach as well. That's the ultimate pointer, so to speak. Anyways, I'll leave it here for now. I won't try and confuse you too much. Hopefully it was clear enough. If not, let me know if you have any questions. I'm always happy to answer, and I'll see you all next time. Create a nice day.